Everyone, happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining another webinar with us over here today, talking about data governance and AI with Purview and Copilot. Definitely a big topic. We're seeing a lot of organizations that are showing interest in generative AI capabilities. And like with all good things, there are some issues and challenges that you need to address to safely implement it within your nonprofit organization. And that's a big part about what we're going to be talking about today. So for those that have never met me, my name's Gareth Young. I'm the founder and chief architect over here at LevaCloud. We're a security and compliance focused partner that works with the Microsoft team across multiple sectors, TSI, nonprofit being one of the main ones. And yeah, I'm on with Raina as well. Raina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Raina Bellum. I'm on the customer experience security team at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for a little bit over 2 years now, and my main role is to kind of help partners and customers understand how to secure their data in the age of AI. So it's nice to meet you guys.
So we've got the creme de la creme of expertise on AI from Microsoft with us today, which I'm very excited about. I think this is going to be a really good one. So yeah, I guess with that, we'll kind of just dive in and get started here. So the pace of innovation and adoption around generative AI has been absolutely insane, actually. I don't think I've ever seen another technology that has been bleeding edge go viral and be adopted as quickly as generative AI tools have. Now, it all kind of started with ChatGPT back in November of 2022, and it got to 100 million users, 100 million in just 3 months. Now, to give you a kind of benchmark, that's actually faster than the adoption of the internet. It took 7 years to get to that point. And even the cell phone or mobile phone took 16 years to get to that point. So this, yeah, literally is like one of the fastest adopted technologies in history. Absolutely insane. Now, when we talk about generative AI, really we're saying systems that create original content rather than just processing input. They're built on top of deep learning models that are trained on extensive data sets, and they produce human-like content that can enhance creativity and productivity. Now, the big challenge is, that sort of rapid output leads to an immense amount of data generation. And Gartner's estimating that over the next 3 years, generative AI will actually account for 10% of global data, which does bring a lot of benefits, especially in the nonprofit sector, where you guys want to leverage all the efficiencies you can to work with the resources that you're able to acquire. But there's a lot of risk that comes with it too, as I mentioned, especially in the lens of sensitive data. Now, some of the main challenges that come from managing data risks from AI. So first of all, lack of visibility. 43% of organizations struggle with insufficient controls to detect and mitigate AI-related risks. And then data protection gaps as well. 35% of organizations feel vulnerable to data security issues, especially when sensitive data is exchanged with AI apps. And that's probably the biggest problem, especially when folks are using the sort of free public-facing versions of the popular AI platforms. And like regulatory pressures as well. This sort of rapid adoption in business workflows is really increasing the need to comply with regulations that are really evolving on a daily basis at this point, right? It's very important that security teams remain compliant and that you can keep up with these new regulations. Otherwise, it could cause a lot of problems for you guys, right? Whether it's from a monetary perspective or even sort of your name in the community type perspective. Now, some of the challenges around application risk. lack of visibility. So having limited insight into what apps are actually being used and by who is a big problem, first of all. I mentioned a little bit about the use of public AI applications. One of the biggest things that we're seeing across these tools just now is the sharing of sensitive data into them. So you imagine a scenario, and we're going to show you a little bit of this, where someone wants to send a letter out to all of the donors, and to make it easier, they copy a bunch of donor information and they just go and paste that into a public chat GPT and ask it to write a letter template for each of them, for example. At some point, someone's going to put in a prompt somewhere else in the world, and potentially that sensitive information will be surfaced to them, because everything that you just put into those public models, it gets fed back into the sort of training database, if you like, and the system learns from it and it reuses it. That's kind of how these things work. Whereas, when you go to something like Copilot that's been purchased by the organization, it's ring fenced to your environment. Definitely one of the biggest things just now between data leaks and oversharing of data inside of these tools. And then, the compliance side of it as well. They enable rapid content creation, which can actually lead to unethical outputs, whether it's fake news or fraudulent content, depending on how the underlying sort of data has been manipulated. And really, proper governance is critical so that you can stay compliant with different regulations and organizational codes of conduct as well. Now, thing that not a lot of folks realize is that there's sort of a shared responsibility model when it comes to these different AI capabilities, and you actually get different flavors of them as well. Now, when I say shared responsibility model, that's between, the responsibilities between the service provider, Microsoft most likely in this case, or OpenAI or whoever, and then you guys as the organization that's consuming the AI service. There's different types of AI that you can actually consume. So there is IaaS and PaaS, or infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. So for example, if you were to go into Azure, Microsoft Azure, you can deploy the Azure OpenAI suite. There's lots of different models in there that you can use, and that's to from the ground up own everything about the underlying AI model in terms of its configuration, and then build your own apps on top of it, sort of thing. And in those types of scenarios, you might be choosing to use your own data to train it so that it can answer questions about things specific to your organization. Or maybe you're sort of taking a middle ground where you're using the shared data set, and Microsoft's running the underlying model for you, but you're building on top of it because you're making your own app or something like that you want to integrate it into. And then you've got the SaaS model, where really you're just consuming the AI as a service, and that's really like your sort of Copilot. And if you look, you can see here the spread of how the responsibility changes. But the thing that I really want to point out here is that, for IaaS and PaaS, maybe it seems a bit more obvious because they're services that you're kind of doing a lot of building on, that you've got to do a lot of the securing of those services. SaaS, key thing, there is still a responsibility there for you guys to monitor the AI usage, ensure that it's used appropriately, and wrap some governance around the data that's being used with it as well, or accessed with it, for example. Imagine the scenario that I'm sure we're going to talk about of someone trying to access different pieces of sensitive data that are just available within your environment because maybe the permissions aren't as tight as they should be. That kind of thing falls into your lap, even in the sort of SaaS model. Now, Microsoft has implemented some foundational security controls to make Copilot enterprise ready. That's what makes it stand apart from other solutions that are out there. Like, for example, with the the Google Bard one that you might just go and sign up to and use. Microsoft's made the effort to bake this into the Microsoft 365 platform and wrap tools like Purview around it that we're going to learn about to enable it so that you can secure the use of it within your organization. And you need to sort of configure that once you get everything licensed to operationalize it so that you can block different types of risky access and who's allowed to use it and what they're allowed to do with it and that kind of thing. And there's the data that they're accessing, but then there's also the use of it by employees themselves, right? Making sure that the things that they're generating are ethical and they're not trying to do things that are inappropriate with the prompts to extract information with it or generate different types of documents or articles or text that's inappropriate for the workplace. And we're going to be demonstrating some of these controls to show you how you can manage the data and the different interactions in AI and that kind of thing as we go through this. Now, I mentioned Microsoft Purview. So for those that aren't super familiar with it, this is Microsoft's compliance platform. It's built on top of Microsoft 365. For those of you that have attended our Defender webinars, Defender is all about the security side of things, securing your organization, regardless of which cloud platform it's in and what device you're using. Microsoft Purview, all about the compliance side of things. So this is where we look at securing your data, regardless of where it resides and how it's shared. And part of Purview, we now have this integrated AI suite that does all sorts of cool stuff around data classification, data mapping, audit logging, and it's all now in this one unified portal. So for those of you that have logged into Purview recently, you might have noticed something that comes up and says, hey, try the new portal. That's where we took two different products, one that used to be the sort of Microsoft 365 Compliance Center at compliance.microsoft.com, and Purview, which used to live inside of Azure for all the different sort of Azure Data Lake and storage and all that kind of stuff over there. And it's all been unified in the one place. And the idea is that we can extend data security and compliance capabilities into AI. So regardless of where the data is, if you've got users that are leveraging generative AI tools to draw from your data, ask questions about it, or generate new forms of data, then Purview can now be extended to wrap protections around all of those different interactions, and most importantly, give you visibility into them. Now, the goal really with all of this is to enable every organization to adopt AI securely, and Purview's a very mature platform. It's been around for years now. Microsoft's been doing this for a long time. All of the different learnings that they've got from securing enterprises from a compliance data security standpoint have been put into this new world of AI data security. And again, it doesn't matter whether, this is securing the service level from a Microsoft perspective, stuff that your organization is generating, or even some of the different consumer AI tools that users might be trying for different use cases. Purview's there to kind of help secure all of that. And really at the center of it is Microsoft Copilot, which is obviously Microsoft's AI tool. Now, it's really cool, with Purview, it does provide a lot of visibility into AI-related data security risks, and it's going to show us things like sensitive data usage, risky AI activities, and that's both for Microsoft 365 Copilot and for the non-Microsoft AI tools that I mentioned as well. So this really allows you to take, swift action and strengthen your security posture. Um, there's a lot of ready-to-use, customizable policies inside of Purview now, specific to AI, and this basically helps you control, how sensitive data is shared through different AI prompts and responses. Um, and you might have seen some of the things coming out of Ignite this week, the conference that's going on just now, where not only can Copilot respect sensitivity labels, it's now got integration into data loss prevention. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff, so that you can get very granular with what data Copilot is allowed to access and not allowed to access, and what data users can like literally copy and paste into the prompt box, whether it's from a Copilot perspective or on one of those third-party tools. And if you've got regulatory and compliance needs, there's features inside of Purview as well to help you do things like audit evidence capture, do searches and e-discovery, retain things. There's deletion policies for prompts and responses now as well. So if you need to keep all that as part of an e-discovery legal situation, you can. And it's got things in there to help detect any sort of like code of conduct violations too. Now let's explore how some of these capabilities can actually address the concerns that we've been talking about here. So touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but one common scenario is the data leak, right? A high risk user shares sensitive data with a consumer AI app such as ChatGPT. It's a concern that's actually led some organizations that we work with to block the usage of these AI tools completely. And Purview's got a few different solutions to help mitigate the risk. So data security posture management for AI in Microsoft Purview. This is a new module that used to be called the AI Hub. They've recently renamed it to Data Security Posture Management for AI. And basically, this thing provides visibility into the AI app usage, any sensitive data and prompts. It gives user risk context as well. And it'll actually cover Copilot and third-party AI apps. So if you're curious as to how it can do that, basically there's a browser extension that you can kind of push out with Intune. Or I guess other management tools, which helps give it visibility into the different AI apps that folks are accessing and putting information into. It's kind of like your starting point, really, is to understand, what's being used and what are they doing with it. So that would be the first place I'd recommend going. Data loss prevention. So we've got endpoint data loss prevention. There's policies there that basically prevent users from copying and pasting or uploading sensitive data into apps like ChatGPT, and it's supported across, Chrome and Edge and that kind of thing. And I mean, that's very powerful capability. Instead of having to outright block these tools, you can safely allow users to explore them without the risk of sensitive data being exposed, because they are really a game changer for productivity, all of these different AI tools. And the third thing I'd mention is adaptive protection in Microsoft Purview. And basically this offers targeted controls that will block high risk users from exfiltrating data, where a user that's just considered a low risk is allowed to sort of maintain productivity. And that's great for a few different use cases. Someone who suddenly starts trying to do things that maybe they shouldn't, their risk's going to be elevated. And, they might be doing that negligently, maliciously, or maybe their account's been compromised, right? And it's a threat actor trying to exfiltrate the data. So adaptive protection is awesome, because, we're not just relying on static policies that might not be flexible enough to support the productivity that our users need. Instead, it can adapt on demand. Now, let's kind of go through some different sort of screenshot views of how this stuff actually works, so you can really kind of see it in action. And Raina's going to help walk us through some of that.
All right, thank you, Garrett. So as he was saying, Microsoft has identified these top challenges that have, usually among our customers, they typically, have problems with data leakage, data oversharing, and non-compliant usage. And so for the first one, data leak, as he mentioned, AI Hub has now been renamed to DSPM, which is Security Posture Management for AI. So throughout this presentation, if you do see AI Hub mentioned, just know that it has now been replaced. But overall, this is kind of a comprehensive dashboard that will show you visibility into what's going on in your environment. You want to understand, just a very overview of, how many times are your users visiting certain AI applications. So if you're using Copilot, on top of Copilot, you may also be using Google Bard or ChatGPT, or allowing your users to be able to use that. And so the goal here is that you want to be able to get clear visibility into these security risks. And this is where you would see it kind of on one main page. And so, total prompts over time, for example, you may want to see how often are your users using some of these applications, some of these AI, how many times they're putting in prompts just in general, or how many times are they visiting other AI assistants. If Copilot is one of your main, or whichever application is your main one, you want to be able to kind of see, overall, how many next 30 days have they been using it. That's just more so for insight on your own environment. And then for sensitive data and prompts, you want to know exactly which type of sensitive data is constantly at risk of being leaked. You want to see maybe if in your organization, someone constantly is leaking credit card numbers or social security numbers, donor information, bank account, routing numbers, things like that. That's something you definitely want to have some insight on exactly where that is coming from. And then maybe you also want to break it down to, okay, which specific AI are these prompts being given into? And then we can move to the next slide, Gareth. So this is continued onto the AI Hub section of things. Again, you would be able to see all of this information that is culminated together. So like he mentioned with the adaptive protection, it will be able to see whether someone's a high risk user or a low risk user based off the set of permissions, if they're allowed, who is allowed to access what, who is constantly, which users are constantly leaking data, and whether that's intentional or unintentional is still something that you may want to have visibility into. So this is a great place, the DSPM portal, just to be able to actually see all of these at once. And then you can move forward here. So there's also a chance that, okay, yes, you see all of overall what's happening in your organization, but maybe now you want to be able to dive right in and see exactly who said what, at what time did they say it, what exactly prompt were they, what sensitive information was put in there. And this is where you can go to Activity Explorer and see a log of all the different prompts that have been included in, or how many times your user have, put a certain prompt with sensitive information in it. So in this example, we'll start with file upload to cloud. So that very first one, we would want to go a little bit more into that. And then we can go to the next slide here. So here you would be able to see that the user, Mona Kane, she put certain sensitive information, and in this case, it's a credit card number. You'd be able to see exactly what the activity was, what time this happened. You'll see their IP address, what device they're on, what policies may be affecting to that. DSPM is the one who found it. And just get all this information to get a very closer look on that fact that they put this information in Google Bard. And that's not something you want to maybe prevent, and it's something you'd be able to do later. And if you do see this user constantly doing it, you may want to mark them as a high risk user and limit their access to certain information, which is something that you can do with adaptive protection. So this is where the endpoint DLP policies that you can also set in place. So the idea here is you do not want users to be able to go into confidential, sensitive files and then be able to copy that information and then put it into an AI assistant. And then that's potentially leaves your organization at risk for data leak, because this is supposed to be a confidential document, and there's policies that you can put in place to make sure that you can prevent, and block sensitive data from being able to be copy and pasted from one place to another. So in this example, Project Obsidian is the example, hypothetical file that we'll probably refer to more throughout this presentation as we go through these demo scenarios. But Project Obsidian is a confidential document this user is trying to copy, and then we can go to the next slide. And they're trying to paste into Google Bard. So this works the same way with Copilot or ChatGPT. It doesn't really matter. They try to put it in, and now Microsoft Purview DLP policy alerts the user and saying, hey, this is unprotected. This is prohibited from your organization. You're not allowed to copy that sensitive information and then throw it in there. So this is a big scenario. I think a lot of organizations just want to be able to prevent and block. So we do have some solutions to be able to do so. And endpoint DLP is a great way to be able to block that behavior. Okay, so this is how to address risk of data oversharing. So this is another scenario that I think is typically a challenge amongst a lot of organizations. This is one of the main scenarios that a lot of people want to prevent. And there's some organizations who may not even want to use AI at all because they're not sure how to get ahead of this potential someone getting access to data that they're not supposed to through other AI apps and being able to exfiltrate it for personal gain. And so there are some solutions that Purview can help with addressing this particular issue. So for example, a user access Project Obsidian, which again is a hypothetical document that we're using for the sense of this demo. And they want to access this, try to going through Copilot for M365. And then they want to exfiltrate it for personal gain. Maybe they want to take that information and put it on their own personal flash thumb drive, or just take the information and put it in a place where they're not supposed to. And so there's 3 solutions that we can do to kind of address this issue. And so the first one is communication compliance. So essentially, communication compliance is something that will be able to detect certain words, certain sentences or phrases even that are put into an AI assistant and says, hey, I want to get access to this. And it would be able to notice and recognize that this user is trying to get access to something that they don't typically have access to. And it will then be able to detect that and alert you and put it into a particular place in a log of all of the time that this person has put that prompt in. The second solution would be to apply sensitivity labels on the Project Obsidian SharePoint site libraries. So anywhere where this sensitive document lives, you want to just go ahead and put a sensitivity label on all of those files and all of those documents so that you can then apply, there will be an auto apply label policy that you'll be able to have stretching across the entire project and restrict it to only people who have access to doing that. And so you do that through information protection. So setting those sensitivity labels will be able to give you access of who should have access to something. If they do have access, okay, are they able to share it, and just managing that process for you. And then the last solution is creating DLP policies for labeled files to prevent data exfiltration with data loss prevention. So again, once you set those sensitivity labels, now you want to put some action to it. Now you want to decide what happens to a user who does try to access a document they're not supposed to be, What do you want to do? Do you want to block them? Do you want to restrict this person? Do you want to send an alert to the admin? You'd be able to kind of gauge what would happen here. And so if you put all those 3 solutions together, this is how you'd be able to kind of help prevent data oversharing. So the user would be able to detect that this is a potentially risky user because they're trying to access information that they may not have access to, and they're trying to go through, take a kind of a shortcut by going to Copilot and thinking, oh, it won't know that we have protections on it, and this is where you'd be able to have that extra protection for you. And then after you set those things, every time that the person tries to put that prompt in, the permission controls associated with any of the sensitivity labels or any of those DLP policies that you set would be able to block it and honor those permissions. So this is the first location. So communication compliance, as I mentioned earlier, this is where I was saying that it would be able to detect certain prompts that is put in and then put it in a log under communication compliance. So for example, here, Alex Wilbur on Tuesday, November 7th, he tried to go into Copilot and BizChat and then ask, hey, what are the latest files on Project Obsidian? And this is exactly where it'd be able to detect someone asking about this sensitive information and be able to log it for you in one place. Similarly to, it's also, you can maybe someone tried to go into Microsoft Word or any other M365 location and try to pull information from the original document and put it into another. So with those automatic label policies, they would be able to just, as soon as a person says, hey, take this information and write a short FAQ on Project Obsidian and lay it into this new document. This new document will now inherit that same label that was originally set for that original document or file and apply it to here as well. And so this is a place where you'd be able to apply any protection controls. So that includes like encryption, any rights management, who has access to what, and if you want to add watermarking to any of your document files, this is how you would be able to do so. So again, so at the top, you see this person that, Copilot did, this person, assumably has access to this document. So they were able to take, to put a prompt into Copilot and ask it to take from another sensitive document and throw it into this new one. But at the top here, it will give you an alert saying there's a policy tip. Your organization automatically apply that sensitivity label. It's confidential. It's only specific to specific users. And all of those policies and labels will now automatically apply to this data since it's kind of coming from the same place. So that's something that can be helpful as well. Again, so going into Copilot, someone's asking, what is Project Obsidian about? So again, this user, based off the response of Copilot, probably does not actually have access to this information. And so Copilot is going to honor any of those rights management permissions and make sure that it blocks you from doing it. So it'll say, oh, I'm sorry, couldn't find any specific information about Project Obsidian in my search results. Could you, try to provide more context? And so again, this is a great example of being able to, protect all of your information and not allow AI apps, whether it's Copilot or otherwise, to be able to see it. And then if someone's constantly trying to access information, that's where you can go back to that adaptive protection where you'll be able to see this is a high risk user. They constantly keep asking for this information and you'll be able to make some inferences and, have some solutions over that as well. So say a user does actually have access to that sensitive data. Even though they do have access to it and they are an authorized user, Copilot still is going to make sure that it inherits those confidential labels. So here you can see that they did give some information about it, but it's still going to label itself as confidential and be able to kind of make sure that everyone's aware that this is supposed to be a sensitive information. Keep going. So yeah, so basically with Copilot just automatically inherits whatever the most restrictive label that you have set on it after you make those policies and add those labels, whatever it refers to, it would make sure that it's still continuing to protect that response from any unauthorized use, even though this person does actually have access. So it's a good way to be able to prevent exfiltration and overall prevent data oversharing. So the last scenario that we do have here is how can Microsoft Purview help address risk of data compliance? As we're moving into the age of AI, there's just so much regulations that are coming into place, or it may be, impacting your organization at this moment, and you want to make sure that certain information is not being spread that is incorrect. So that can include maybe manipulating content, harassment, discrimination, things like that. You want to be able to sense those prompts being put into Copilot and be able to store it somewhere. So the example here that we have is users use Copilot to generate a non-compliant content, and then that essentially ends up resulting in an investigation or an audit or litigation. And there's 3 solutions that you could be able to apply to prevent that from happening as much as possible, and or at least keep track of every time that does happen. So the first one, again, I've talked about communication compliance earlier, but on the other side of communication compliance, other than, detecting something and finding and putting in one place, it also has ready to use trainable classifiers, which is powered mainly by machine learning. But again, as I was mentioning, like discrimination, trying to manipulate information or trying to use AI to manipulate content, that might be something very important for nonprofit organizations. You just want to be careful about that. It's very easy to have fraudulent information or to fake information these days using AI. And so communication compliance would be a place for you to be able to detect any of those prompts coming in. And then the second solution here is to retain all Copilot for M365 interactions. So you can use that in data lifecycle management, and then you can log all those activities within audit. So data lifecycle management, if you're not familiar with it, that's where all the retention policies or deletion policies come in. It's like, so maybe you don't want your prompts to stay in your system for several years or forever. Maybe you want to put a limit on that. Maybe you want to retain after a year or so and then get rid of it. Or maybe you want to wait till there's an audit, or maybe there's a yearly audit or however long that is, and you want to delete everything after that audit comes up. So this is where you'd be able to kind of manage any of those interactions and what you do with it and how long does it stay in your system, especially if you have any, regulations that enforce you to delete some of these things or retain it after a certain point. And the last solution will be through e-discovery. And so this is where you would collect all of the relevant data if there's an investigation happening and all of those investigations are from specific prompts, or you're maybe trying to figure out, okay, what is the issue here? Who is the person? Who is the user? Is this a common issue? You'd be able to kind of view all of this in e-discovery. So that includes Copilot interactions, as well as if you have Teams interactions, that could be something that also is included in here as well. But any AI interactions would be a great place to have an investigation in e-discovery. So essentially, these 3 solutions would be able to help address any risk of like data compliance. The organization can detect any non-compliant usage of Copilot and then retain all interactions and activities. And you would be able to respond to any investigation or audits defensively and have all the information and proof that you need all in one place. So again, in the next few slides, I'll just show you a little bit about how that would work. So this is where communication compliance comes in. And so you see the user, Adele Vance, she asks, Copilot, can you show me all the reasons and analysts to make Contoso a weak stock? This is where communication compliance will be able to rely on any of those trainable classifiers and be able to detect, hey, this is a person trying to manipulate information and trying to use AI to be able to do it. It would send an alert and be able to be added to these places. And then Copilot's response or the AI's response would also be somewhere available as well. So, Copilot says, oh, I'm sorry, couldn't find any specific reasons for this, and blocks this user from being able to actually go through Copilot and be able to manipulate information the way that she's asking to. So this is where data lifecycle management exists. Again, as I was mentioning, Teams is also something that you can control as well here. Or if you wanted to just do M365 Copilot interactions, this is where you can set how long do you want things to stay, what location you want them to be at, what do you want to happen after a certain period of time with all of these prompts and interactions, especially if there's just an overwhelming amount, you may not want all of that in your system. And using data lifecycle management is a great way to be able to kind of help with that. So here is the audit log part. And so this is where all of your Copilot interactions would be recorded in audit logs, and it helps conduct investigations whenever needed. So again, you'd have a whole comprehensive list of everything that a user, so this particular person is being investigated, which is Alex. There's multiple times, and one day even that he kept putting certain information into prompts, and they could tell that this was non-compliant usage. So you get some information and details specifically on what exactly those things are. When did he interact with it? You'll be able to see the timestamp, and that information might help you conduct any investigation that you may need. And then this is where eDiscovery Copilot interactions can then be collected and reviewed in eDiscovery, and that helps with any investigations that you have. So again, this is where you might just be able to see a bunch of users putting certain prompts and putting all of that in one place and going into investigation to then make decisions. Whatever decision will be best for your organization, you want to make sure that you can get ahead of that and go through each case and resolve them as needed.
I guess this is where I take over again, Raina. So, you know, a lot of great capability that Raina's shown us there. And I think the biggest sort of takeaway I hope that everyone gets from the slides so far is that what Microsoft's really done here is they've taken, you know, what is a top tier AI model, most popular one in the world, and they've evolved that into an enterprise ready solution, because that's exactly what Copilot is. You know, it's the one that you want to empower all of your user base with, because you can get the guardrails around it, you can secure it, and they can use your data appropriately within it. It's enterprise ready, essentially. And you know, to get started with these generative AI tools and really kind of use them in an enterprise security setting, first thing you want to do is discover the activity that's actually going on in the environment at the moment to get a sense of how these different AI apps are being used, and also like what sensitive data is flowing through it. The capabilities we showed you in the very beginning will help kind of peel back the onion on that. Now, second, get the endpoint DLP in place. You know, we need that to prevent the sensitive data from basically going out a multitude of different egress points, whether it's ChatGPT's website, Google Bard, you know, you name it. There is value in exploring these different ecosystems, but you want to make sure your sensitive data does not end up in them, because that's where you could get into a situation where it's, like I said, surfaced by someone else's prompt. You know, beyond that too, ensuring that Copilot, if we're going the enterprise ready route and getting all that amazing capability that we just saw to be able to audit and do e-discovery and, you know, have all the right policies in place, you know, having it wrap guardrails around that too, to make sure that users aren't surfacing information that they really shouldn't be, then DLP is going to be important for that. And then third, the labeling policies. So moving to sensitivity labeling and getting that in place is definitely crucial as you start really using these capabilities in anger and rolling them out across your entire organization. You know, we saw the example of someone writing a document that they prompted about a particular project. You know, in a sort of nonprofit setting, we can think of different initiatives and missions that the organization's involved in, where someone does need to go and create a marketing document or, you know, an FAQ guide or something about different initiatives that you guys are involved in. And, you know, sometimes those will be internal only, and maybe for review by an executive team. You're going to want to make sure when someone is generating on the fly documents of that nature that they are tagged as confidential, so that they don't end up in the wrong hands accidentally, and you can kind of track them. And manual labeling is not going to work. That's where a lot of organizations start, but with just the speed that you can generate different things, we can't rely on the users to manually apply sensitivity labels to them. So having it done automatically is going to be crucial there. So these slides will get shared by Tony after this. He'll reach out to everyone so you can get a copy. And you'll see here there's some different resources that you can access to learn more on these topics. And of course, we're more than happy to help and answer questions as well. There is a little Q&A box that we have in the top of the Teams chat, or you can go into the chat itself if you've got some questions you'd like to ask just now. And of course, afterwards, feel free to follow up with us, and more than happy to help. We are working with a lot of non-profit customers to operationalize Purview. We've got a great playbook for it. And there's some different funding options that we can leverage from Microsoft to help you get started with it as well. Now, number 6 coming up in 2 weeks after the holiday, after everyone's had their fill of turkey. We'll be going even deeper into the world of Copilot with Copilot for Security and how you can use AI to respond to threats in your environment. That's going to be a really good one. So please register for that as well. Now we'll take the next few minutes to sort of pause and answer any questions in the chat here. We'd love to get your feedback on this session. Let's tell everyone how Raina did an awesome job with that demo, because she did. And we would appreciate your feedback on whether you'd like to see more webinars of this nature as well. So yeah, I guess with that, Raina, any more thoughts from you or anyone on my team, anything you'd like to share?
There's a question in the chat. I think we can start there. Tony Wynn was asking if Purview required endpoints to be managed by Azure Intune. Digging in a little bit, the question really is surrounded by data loss prevention.
Yeah, okay. So not really, no. To use data loss prevention on the endpoints, they need to be onboarded to the endpoint DLP service. There's 2 ways you can do that. Kind of just directly by essentially pushing out a little kind of onboarding blob, I'll call it that. And you don't have to do that through Intune. You could do that through Group Policy or another management tool as well. And if you guys happen to be users of Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Business, then actually the onboarding is even easier because it uses the same sensor to provide the endpoint DLP capabilities. So all you would have to do is go into the onboarding inside of Purview and click the button, and it just pulls them all in from Defender. So hopefully that helps answer that question. I guess outside of endpoint DLP as well, there's no Intune requirement across really any of those capabilities. Intune just makes it a lot easier to manage the endpoints over something like Group Policy or a third-party tool because of all the integration between these different tool sets. Yeah, and if you are a Defender user, like the level of fidelity you get with the Defender integration into the endpoint DLP is wild. I mean, you can track down to the level of obviously who's copying and pasting into the web browser, right? Because that's how this works. But I mean, stuff going out to USB, copied to file shares, printed, all sorts of different sensitive information types. You imagine someone generates one of those sensitive documents that Raina was showing us inside of Word, and then immediately turns around and prints it. You'd be able to track that through endpoint DLP and even take actions against it. So yeah, it's killer. The integration is really cool.
So I see from Michael Amara about information compliance and communication compliance. So yeah, so there's 2 different ways that it can be used. So communication compliance is looking at the specific language. So that's where you'd be able to put specific words that pop up. But this is kind of the example using it specifically for AI prompts. And so if you want it to be kind of set for that, this is where you'd be able to go in and just be able to see every time someone puts a certain prompt in there using certain words or referring to a sensitive document, they would be able to see that in communication compliance. So it's just a kind of an extra component as far as AI goes. But you're correct that that's mainly what communication compliance is typically for, especially when you go into, E5 and some of those add-ons for communication compliance. Not sure if that answered the question, but No problem.
Any other questions? Feel free to type them in the chat. Not seeing any bubbles here. And I know we're coming up on time, but like Gareth said, I'll be, licensing. Okay. All right, licensing per endpoint. Is that, Tony, are you trying to figure out the Purview
Endpoint
licensing?
DLP, probably.
Endpoint, gotcha.
Per user on that one, Tony.
It's per user.
Yeah, per user. And I would imagine, Raina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it probably falls under the 5 devices per user type thing that most other things seem to.
Yes, yeah, you're correct. I also would say that Business Premium, some of these features that I did mention, as far as like endpoint DLP and communication compliance, would also be included in either E5 or any of the security and compliance add-ons that we do have. So some of them may not be, included in that Business Premium license SKU as well.
Yeah, and if anyone has any specific questions, when I follow up with the slides and the recording to the webinar, feel free to just shoot me a note back. And I'll do my best to answer it via email, or I can even broker or set up the call between you and Microsoft to answer any of the licensing questions you may have.
So, in answer to Michael's question there, Purview has its own role-based access control. So even though global admins and compliance managers get a certain level of access, to actually use all of this different capability, you need to go in and assign additional roles from within Purview itself. So, maybe someone in the security admin role might be able to get in there, at least at the high level, but that doesn't assure access to anything sensitive, really. To get access to all the different things that we've shown you from a reporting perspective and an audit log perspective, you need to be assigned additional role-based access control roles. Because believe it or not, global admin doesn't get access to everything, and it's kind of designed like that on purpose, because we wouldn't necessarily want someone who's got global admin for doing, service management, being able to go into Purview and see what the CEO's been asking Copilot, sort of thing. So yeah, really nobody else is going to get a whole lot of access until you start assigning role-based access control roles inside of Purview. Awesome.
Any last thoughts, comments, or questions as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I always feel like at times like this that, Ryan, I'll take this one back to the Teams product team. We need some background music when we're in our little Q&A. That should be a feature built at the Teams.
Like an exit song. Yeah.
I love it so much sense, actually. I mean, I know some people have played music in a certain way on here. I'm not entirely sure how to do that myself, but I think I've seen someone do it. But I'm not sure if they were just playing it on their own computer or actually doing it.
I need to up my game on that one, clearly. Awesome.
All right. If there are no more questions, then again, thank you so much for joining us today. I will follow up with the slides and the recording after. If anything comes up, feel free to shoot me a note back and we can have a conversation offline about it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye.